This is the third assignment for the fourth quiz in the first trimester. So simplifying square roots of negative integers and simplifying complex numbers. And this is what it looks like. So basically we're going to follow all of our rules for simplifying square roots, and then if it's negative, we are going to tack an I on, because I stands for the square root of -1. And so you have these notes, and we are kind of starting to look at this, and there are some samples down here that are really good, and then there's some samples on this page to look at in your notes that are pretty good with operations involving complex numbers. And what I would like you to do on this page is put these decimals down next to this. I didn't do this and you'll see when we start doing powers of I how that will play out. Okay, so have those handy all the time. And then we're just going to reduce the square root, and if it's negative, we're going to tack an I on. Express square root of -75 in notation. So the square root of 75 is 5 times the square root of 3. And then tack an I on. Now, typically what some texts do is that they put the I between the integer and then the square root, which is okay to do. And I'm going to move around here and just do different problems so you can get a flavor of how this works. So this would be 4 times 7/8 times I. Okay, so the square root of 49 and 64 work perfectly. And then you want to reduce that as 7/2 times I. Square root of -29. Well, you cannot reduce it, so you don't. And then you just tack an I on the end. So here you have a negative outside. Square root of 28 is 2 times the square root of 7, and then an I. Okay, so you just pull that negative out of the square root by tacking an I on the end when you do this. So this is, we'll say 1 over the square root of 3I. I would accept that. Okay, so you square root top and bottom. But there's this goofy rule that says you got to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3 to get rid of such math rules, to get rid of that discriminant on the bottom. So again, just simplifying rules. That's not going to be part of what we do, but I thought I would show that to you. Okay, so add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So this is 8I plus 6I. Don't forget to put the I on the end, and don't just do it if there's no negative in there. So there has to be a negative. So many students end up just always putting an I down after simplifying any square root, and that's not what you do. It's only if it's negative in there. So 0 on that one. So 9I times 5I. This is 45I squared. Now we have an I squared. What does that mean? So I is defined as the square root of -1. That's why we pull that out when we simplify. Okay, so we're just essentially, doing the product of, if I was going to do this, I am representing this as the product of the square root of 16 times the square root of -1. Well, the square root of -1 we just call I, so that reduces as 4I. But I squared is we square that, which removes the radical on the right. And then I cubed, same thing. We take I squared times I, which puts that negative in front, and then the square root, and then I squared is I to the 4th. And notice how this repeats for every block of 4, and we're going to get into that in the next assignment. So I squared is simply -1. I want you to say that to yourself 5 times. I squared equals -1. I squared equals negative 1. I squared equals negative 1. It's like a sign change. A sign change. So 4 times the square root of 3, I, on the top. And then the bottom will be 4 times the square root of 3i. Well, that looks like negative 1 to me, because everything drops out with the negative sign. Okay, so you have the rest of these to do. I'll leave 13 for you to do. I was going to do it, but I'll leave that for you to do. We need to know how to do these because this is still involved in simplifying on the last step the quadratic formula.